Alright everyone out there in Banjo land, Mike Heading here, coming today with a quick little mini banjo lesson. I'm going to break down one of my favorite two-measure D licks that I got from J.D. Crowe. If you've ever listened to like the Bluegrass album band recordings, so in my opinion some of the best bluegrass banjo lead and backup ever recorded, definitely check those albums out. But this lick is all over those albums. It's a classic lick. So the left hand of this lick is pretty easy, but we're going to kind of focus on the right hand and then focus on creating some subtle variations. I always say this, but Scruggs, J.D. Crowe style, the improvising is kind of these subtle variations. We're not reinventing the wheel, going completely off script. We're going to create these really subtle variations that, again, how do we take a simple lick and create, I think I've got like 10 variations on it that we can do. So let's start breaking it down. Here we go. Okay, so first let's just hear how the lick sounds. Here we go. A little slower. Okay, so like I said, our left hand's going to be super easy. We're actually just going to be holding a two-finger D chord. So we've got our ring finger of our left hand on the fourth fret of the low string, the fourth string. And we've got our index finger on the second fret of the third string. So basically, if you envision like this full four-finger D chord, you're probably familiar with, we're just using the low two strings of it. Very common Scruggs position. And that's all we're doing there to start, is just keeping those two fingers down. So let's just look at the right hand only, because again, like I said, I think the magic of this lick is kind of in the right hand. So let's skip the left hand for a second, pretend they're all zeros, and we'll look at measures 3 and 4. We're going to do this. So loop that as many times as you need to. Loop. Play it as slow as you need to, like I said, and then what you're going to work on is just put your left hand back down and play that exact same right hand, and then work on getting that. You can't obviously be back too much like this. You need all those notes to cleanly ring out. So if you want to hear how it resolves, you can go back to like open G. Something like that. So the one other thing I like to do with this lick that kind of helps it bring it to life rhythmically is I like to accent my middle finger of my right hand. So let's go back to just the right hand only. So if we accent our middle finger, it kind of helps the lick pop out a little bit. So you have... What's really cool about that is if you do that, it adds this cool like underlying syncopation where we're going 1 and 3, 4 and. So again, all those, the middle fingers of your right hand when you're playing those rolls happens kind of on an on beat, off beat, on beat. It's kind of switching back and forth, so you get this really cool syncopation. Again, you do just the right hand, try and accent your middle finger. I recommend playing it louder than you might at first, kind of over-exaggerate it, and then once you get it down, dial it back. So you have... A little faster, you can kind of hear how it starts to create a cool rhythm. And like I said, if you don't do that, it's not the end of the world, but again, I think that'll help the lick kind of come to life. Add the left hand back down one more time. Then open. So let's just look at a few examples of how we can use that lick. Again, it's a two-measure D lick, so it'll be used over the 5 chord in the key of G, right? Like if we have G, C, G, D, right there is where we use it. Songs like Gonna Settle Down, Your Love Is Like a Flower, Rolling in My Sweet Baby's Arms, any of those songs that have 2 measures of the 5 chord, this lick works perfectly. So let's look at how we can bring it back to G after we have... And then maybe like the Scruggs lick. Or you can come out of it and do like a roll, right? So again, just coming back into G, and then either doing a lick, or a roll, or another lick, right? You just want to hear how that resolves back to the G chord, the 1 chord. The other thing you might see is ending on the 4th string like this. But usually it'll kind of end on the 3rd string. So let's just look at a couple variations, and then we'll kind of look at how we can put that into practice. So remember, a lot of the variations are going to be very subtle. So let's just keep our our left hand down and try this variation. So we have. So right there, I just ended with a different rhythm, right? I ended with a quarter note. And then practice going into like an ending. So you'd have. Another variation would be starting with a quarter note, right? So. Some very subtle rhythmic variations, like I said. Let's look at another variation where we're going to change the ending of the lick very slightly. We're going to go. So this one we will change the left hand very slightly, but we're going to go. Like that. So kind of just going back to the 1 chord a little bit early. Something like that, right? Or you can hear how like you could practice like going into it like. Another one would be like adding a little hammer on at the end. Something like. See how we're creating these really subtle variations. So kind of even going back a little bit early. That's a very common Scruggs thing, is to like go back to the next chord a little bit earlier, go to the C a little bit earlier, come back off the C back to the G a little bit early. Same thing we're doing in variation 5. We're kind of going back to the home root chord a little bit earlier than your ear would technically expect it. So we have. Could play like another lick there or whatever. More advanced rhythm would be like number 6. So adding a little bit more of that syncopation. So we have. And if you're ever having any doubt with these, just go back and try the right hand on its own. If you're having trouble with any of these licks, my guess is it's probably your right hand, not your left hand, right? Your left hand is not really doing that much in these licks. So just really nail that right hand. Pretend they're all zeros. Just looping variation 6, right? Right, so another one that's more advanced would be like this one. We're going to change the left hand slightly. We're going to add some 3/4 hammer-ons. So we're going to go. So key there is that your right hand is doing the same. And then the only thing we're doing is now hammering on from, I got my middle finger on the 3rd fret of the 4th string, and I'm just hammering on those 3/4s. Really good right hand, or excuse me, left hand practice. So you're not leaning back too much like this. You need to have your hand out, right? So you can get all those notes to ring out. Good practice. So you have. Another one that would be like combining kind of a classic, this lick plus a classic Scruggs lick. So you'd have. Kind of taking that D lick, ending it a little bit early, so you have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, and kind of going into like a G lick, right? So you can see how we're, like I said, we're really not reinventing the wheel. We're taking these lick and creating very subtle variations. Another one would be like more of a rhythmic thing, right? So we have. Number 10 would be like like more advanced, but like a double hammer-on lick. So you have. So the other thing you can do is practice going into them, like I said. So. Lick. So you can practice going into it. Like this lick works really good. Something like that, right? So once you think you got it down, start adding little fragments on either side of the lick. So add like a G roll and then try and go into the lick and then try and add something on the other side, right? If you're still practicing the lick on its own, just practice it on its own. But again, you don't want to just know this lick that you can't play on either side of. So you always want to practice going into the lick and getting out of the lick, even if it's a little bit clunky at first. But that's a really good roll. It's just that. Practice any of the variations, right? Another one would be like. So coming out of that with this lick. Something like that, right? So let's look at some examples of how we could use that. So again, starting on a G. That's a nice lick that goes into it. Lick. And then fill. Right? So you could practice going from like a G, C, and then right here is where the solo example starts. Creating a little progression, right? And then figuring out where that lick fits in, right? A big part of the process is one thing to know the lick, but you need to know where it fits in and again, how it flows around the lick. So I'm taking this idea as my way to get into it. Or I can try one of the other variations, right? Last one would be like. That's a nice one going back, right? So you can see how it comes out of that lick. So now I'm back. That one works really well if your next lick isn't down here, but it's right here, right? So like something like. Your love is like a flower, right? So. Once you get this lick down, and if you listen to like bluegrass album band, that kind of traditional bluegrass, you're going to hear this lick all over the place. Remember, it's mainly a right hand lick, not really doing much with your left hand, but really work on those subtleties and see if you can create those subtle variations. That's a big part of Crow and Scruggs style. It's not totally, doing a new lick in some different position. Maybe like more of a modern banjo approach would be like, yeah, kind of getting more off script, playing more of like a lick. This one we're really staying kind of close to those basic melodies, but then creating those subtle variations. Sometimes, honestly, that's harder, right? It seems like it might be easier, but I think it's actually harder to create little subtle variations than to just completely go off script. it's actually not that hard to go off script and just play whatever. It's like that's almost easier than staying really close to that melody but creating those subtle variations. That's where like Scruggs and Crow were absolute masters of that kind of stuff. All right, hopefully that gives you something new to work on. Practice this and then immediately try and insert it into a song, right? This is a really good lick where you don't want to just know it kind of in outer space or in a theory, right? You need to put this into a song as fast as possible. I can guarantee you're playing some songs with 2 measures of that 5 chord, so this will work really well. It doesn't matter if you have a capo, you know, right? You can play it out of A, you can play it out of B, right? It's a really classic lick. All right, good luck, keep picking. You got this.